listening to the Lama podcast. I'm Gunjan.
I'm Rajiv.
And on our show tonight, we have action, emotion, drama. We have Anurag with us, and he's an ITN who has creative itches. He hosts a monthly podcast, Baithak, on old Hindi music, poetry, and films. A huge boy of Punjabi poetry, of Amrita Preetham specifically. He has translated 50 plus poems in Hindi and English and has written a play on partition and a documentary on the shadow of puppets of Kerala. अनुराग ये सब तो ठीक है पर आप करते क्या हो?
ये सब
What do you do for a living, Anurag? Our listeners would love to know.
Yeah, but before I give it to Anurag, there's additional things I want to say that he did not include in his profile. So he also has done a lot of sketching. He does charcoal or pencil, fantastic. And he's also tried his hand on sculpting. So he's my first cousin. So for the listeners, I think you should know. And one person who has had the largest impact on my life. We grew up together. And I remember, when we were growing up, we would exchange books, poems, music. Like I would say 80 to 90% of our growing up was like literally a overlap. Like if you create a superset of our lives.
Two engineers
But
with
yeah,
a age.
I think one of the
Chor Chor Mosere Bhai? Is it like engineer and
yes,
Mosere?
yes, you can
You
say
guys are
that.
Mosere Bhai?
So, but yes, I think uh, one of the best friend I have and my cousin Anurag.
Welcome, Anurag.
थैंक यू राजीव और मैंने आपको पैसे भी नहीं दिए मुझसे बोलने के लिए ये बढ़िया रहा
Free में
I am we have grown each other and we know apropos to the topic today, we know each other since before our first memories, right? तो हमें एक दूसरे के सब सच और सब झूठ सब पता है, so which is a wonderful part of growing up together and having that, and we are fortunate that we live close to each other and get to see each other and enjoy our family. Thank you, Rajiv. तो आपने सवाल पूछा कि मैं क्या करता हूँ. Now बचपन में मुझे कहा गया था कि तुम्हें कहानियाँ सुनाने का शौक है और भाषण देने का शौक है, और मेरी आदतें इतनी खराब थी कि मैं लोगों को सड़कों पे रुक के कहता था कि यार कहानी सुन लो मेरे से, राइट? और खाना खाते खाते मुझे जब तक कहानी यहाँ मैं बताता या सुनाई नहीं जाती थी तो मेरे से खाना नहीं होता था. तो वो जो मेरा इच है, जो कि हो सकता है पिछले जन्म में मैं कोई प्रोफेसर रहा हूँ, तो नाउ आई टीच and I coach technology founders. I had a career of 30 plus years in operating roles in tech startups, where I've been a founder or I've been a leader in technology on business, product, and marketing side. And I've worked at 6 different startups from various stages of growth, including short stints at companies like Google, etc. So after having a lot of fun in working and growing companies, about 2 years ago, I decided that I want to pay forward my knowledge, experience, etc. And now all I do is help technology founders grow their companies at various stages. And I help many founders in India, which is booming. I help many founders in US, where I have been for the last 30 years.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Yes.
And during this journey, and since our podcast is about the lie and we lie more to ourselves than to anybody else, and you've been in industry for such a long period, you coach. As a human or as an animal, why do we lie? Why is it so essential for us to lie?
So it's a very interesting question, because I think I was reading somewhere that the apparatus we have, the capacity we have to understand reality, right? We are limited human beings. In a very scientific way, if you try to understand, possibilities of the world being exposed to us are infinite. we are limited human being in time and space. Our minds are limited, our senses are limited. So by definition, we will have to make sense of the world, which is much bigger and vast than us. But we have two, I think, drives. One is we have to understand reality. And the very apparatus of reasoning, rationality, senses, by which we make sense of the reality, also goes wrong, because inherently we can't be perfect. And therefore, all the errors that come around, we have to lie to ourselves sometimes. To the very act of making sense of something means that something gets excluded. And for a while, that can be ignorance. After a while, that can be lies we tell ourselves. But the truth is, if we were not seeking truth, then we would not be lying to ourselves.
So you're
No,
trying to say
that,
go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was going to say that I think you hit the point that lying is essential for seeking truth.
Exactly. This, because the same apparatus. Now, sometimes the apparatus goes bad. मतलब कि you're so much in denial of in contact of reality. You're so far away from reality कि आपको फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. Then you don't care about. They're only living in your lie. But if you seek truth and you seek it partially, it's a process. You seek some of it. You seek all of it. You can't fully grasp it. There'll be errors. And if we don't have mechanisms for correcting those errors, we continue to have those as lies.
And
एक
how do
वो
we
बात
correct
एक छोटा
ourselves?
सा एक्सप्लेनेशन मुझे बहुत बढ़िया लगा. किसी ने कहा कि ट्रूथ, falsehood are two sides of the same coin, but there is a third aspect called bullshit. And there is a book called On Bullshit. इसे philosopher ने
Yeah.
लिखी है, पतली सी किताब है, 70-75 पेज की, बहुत अच्छी किताब है. और that I found to be a very interesting contrast to truth and falsehood. वही somebody who lies to you knows that there is truth and perhaps is trying to fake you or keep you away from it, right? But somebody who gives you bullshit cares neither about truth or falsity. They basically, it's like shiny objects. वो इतना ज्यादा आपको धुआं डाल देते हैं कि आपको सच और झूठ के बीच में फर्क ही नहीं पता लगता है. So the bullshit, sometimes we live in the world where social media पे otherwise, where so much is given to us that has losing our capacity. They don't even care about whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Third category of bullshit. Because we are sensory seeking animals, वो कहते नहीं कि वो भागा खरगोश. So anything that comes to our attention and that diverts us from either pursuing the truth or correcting the mistakes we have made. It is the third category. And a lot of people sadly just, they've lost the capacity for both, either truth seeking or course correcting or lie correcting.
So is it like our brains are wired for lying? Because एक खाना भी खिलाना होता था, चिड़िया ले जाएगी, चिड़िया ले गई, चिड़िया तुम्हारा खाना. Like, are we wired that way to lie? और बस काम होना चाहिए, doesn't matter.
Our desire for contact with reality is one of the most primal and primitive desires. And आपको किसी ने एक thought experiment दिया कि if you are asked, choose your loved one, your spouse, your child, right? And somebody said, ये thought experiment है कि ये आपको बताया जाएगा कि बस तू दो choices हैं कि let's say your child, your wife or husband loves you, and what they say to you, how they behave with you is absolutely true from inside where it comes from. Or they're a robot. Inside, there's kuch nahi hai, machine hai, and every word and every sense and every action they do is exactly the same. Exactly the same, that you wake up and live with them, etc. Except that there's no reality inside. Which of those would you prefer? Would you prefer like a robot that has no insight and fully, truly loves you and acts like that and says everything with perfection where you even can't tell? Versus somebody who is natural, who is going to tell you a little bit, will fight with you, but there's truth there, there's reality there. And most people would say, no, I want to know the truth. I don't want a machine or something that is just faking it, even if I need to know कि उसके पीछे सच क्या है.
But the problem is usually that we fall in trap of the machine because we are so much trying to correlate the action with the cause. So in AI, if you remember, the correlation is not causation, right? So it's
Exactly
actually
right.
the same thing.
Exactly right.
Just because somebody is saying something or behaving a certain way, it may or may not be the truth.
Quite right. Quite right. And उसके अंदर बिल्कुल you're right. And therefore, while we have one drive, which is that I want to be in contact with reality and really know what the truth is, there's an opposite drive of protecting our ego or making sure that I look good. We are social animals, and I want to have status in life. I don't want to be seen as you know you know Adam Smith said that we all want to be loved and be seen as lovable. It's not enough that that we are loved, but we also want to be seen as good people, intelligent people, moral people. वो drive जो है sometimes can say कि I have to protect that part of me. If others will think less of me, others will think less of my actions, then I have to protect a little bit of that. So that's the opposite drive.
So we want to be like dogs, the pets.
दोनों तरफ दोनों तरफ and
Yes.
those two are in opposition. ऐसे ही है.
So, yeah, Gunjan, you've been
So-
waiting to ask a question.
Did we evolve like as a truth-seeking animals, or are we animals who are just looking for survival? कि बस इस situation से बाहर निकले.
ये
We just
इतना
want
मजे
to, we just
गुंजन ये
don't want to
इतना
be.
मजेदार आपने सवाल किया है. इतना important question है. वो ये है कि if you look at evolutionary theory, which is what we consider to be like how we came about, survival and the pressure is whether you will survive to have an offspring and your genes will propagate, etc. But survival is only slightly correlated with truth seeking, right? Only to the fact that you are in grip of the environment. If you have a good grip of the environment and you can fit yourself to the environment, you will succeed. But you don't have to have grip with all the environment all the way to the depths of reality. जहाँ तक चलता है, if you survive, you survive. And that instinct, therefore, we are both animals who have truth seeking, but truth seeking is hard, is really hard. So there's a deep contradiction, and there are a lot of debates happening in evolutionary theory. Because evolutionary theory is an explanation of how we came about, but it's not an explanation of how our mind works.
Yeah.
So
And I
it's
think that,
unclear.
And mine
yeah,
works more on our experience, like जगजीत सिंह की लाइन है, सुनी सुनाई बात नहीं है, अपने ऊपर बीती है. So it's more of like, what we have experienced. Sometimes we lie just because that was the best option. Just because उस situation से निकलना था, doesn't matter.
That's where your example is correct. The survival of the fittest. अगर मुझे a predator prey की environment है, and if I'm a prey,
Fight or
and
flight.
I have to say some things to get out, that's my survival instinct might be at odds with truth seeking.
Or even if
Truth-seeking
I'm a
is hard.
predator, even if I'm a predator and I'm hungry, so
Yeah.
I would lie
Yeah.
to the prey. Hey, don't worry, kuch
Yeah.
nahi hoga. Yes, we are all friends here. Whoop.
Yes,
Yeah.
come, I'll take you in my cage.
Exactly.
Sliding.
It's a interesting instinct.
So, I was reading an article that there were experiments, and this noticed that, we start lying even as early as 1.5, 2 years old. The moment we start speaking, we naturally lie. We start lying, it's a very natural. And if you remember, even our own childhood, right? We used to say, "Badke maar raha hai," like we would build the stories and narratives and all, this thing. And so is it just storytelling? Is it something that, really makes our creative juices flow? Or, is it multidimensional? What I'm trying to say is, lying and truth seeking, they seem to be multidimensional. We just don't lie for the sake of lying. Sometimes, but sometimes we are lying to, seek out the truth. Sometimes we are lying to, like you said, protect our ego. So that was another interesting,
Yeah,
angle I read somewhere recently.
that's exactly right. So the mechanisms. So एक interesting aspect है जो आप what you're saying, Rajiv, on how do we grow, and as we grow into adulthood, even from childhood, how we lie or don't lie. Uh, there's an interesting set of research on the differences between left and the right hemisphere of the brain and how it works. And there is an author called Ian McGilchrist who has written a book called Master and the Emissary. It's a
Hmm.
good book. It summarizes 50 years of research on hemisphere differences between left and right hemisphere across, mostly for humans, but also across all animals. It actually runs quite deep. But here
Hmm.
is the interesting takeaway that is relevant to lying versus truth telling. There is general idea that because the world is so complex and we can't understand, and we are limited human beings, we have to get the whole picture, and you have to get the whole first before you get the parts, right?
Hmm.
And then you have to, so if you are, let's say, a prey in the jungle or in the African savannah, you have to look at the whole picture right away, very quickly, to say where is danger in the whole picture. And then if you are going to also survive by looking at, let's say, minute objects like berries or food, etc., you also have to narrow your attention and pick up small things. So the right hemisphere is geared towards assessing the whole and making sense of the whole environment around us very quickly, and actually has a comprehends, the word comprehend aata hai, it like completely understands the whole picture to the best ability. And
Hmm.
then the other hemisphere is the grasping hemisphere. That actually, left hemisphere is the one which does abstract working with the concepts, etc. The point being that these two are in tension, right? Always. So
Hmm.
if you forget to pay attention to the large picture, your environment, there might be risk and there might be danger, and you can get eaten. And if you don't pay attention to the control and grasping of the objects and the ideas and the metaphors, and so it's a very interesting dilemma. Our brains are wired in what is called opponent processing. कि एक प्रोसेस ये काम कर रहा है,
Hmm.
scan the big picture. Second process ये काम कर रहा है कि get to the control of the objects and understand the mechanisms. Those two processes are opponent processing. They control each other, and if one goes too much, then you can lose sight of the objects and control. And if you only focus on grasping, then you can lose sight of the whole. This
Hmm.
processing is, I think, foundational to why we lie, because
So
we
it's
want to,
like the,
truth is a process, right? Finding
yeah,
truth is a
yeah,
process.
yeah,
And
yeah,
if you keep going down the narrow realm, कि भाई लॉजिक 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 लॉजिक, वो 15 चेन्स आपने लॉजिक की बना दी हैं, यू लॉस्ट द पिक्चर. कोई कहता
yeah,
है यार क्या
yeah,
हवाई
yeah,
के लिए बना रहा है, like
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. So it's like the forest and the trees and the leaves. So
Exactly.
where you focus, you cannot focus on either or. It is has to be both. And so when you want to seek the truth, you have to go deep. If you want to see the big picture, you have to look at the forest.
Not quite. Actually, I would say the truth seeking is a process that traverses both. You
Ah,
see? So
mm,
because you can't do both at the same time. You literally
yeah,
cannot say, "Ki, I'm going to pay attention to the whole while I'm also paying attention to the small part." So
correct.
you have to decide, ki, bhai, for now, I'm going to pay attention here, then I'm going to pay attention here. So because it's an opponent processing, as long as the both are working in harmony and you're improving your grip with the environment and surviving and truth seeking, you're good. But if you follow one to the end, then you are in trouble. And if you follow other to the end, you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than make it abstract, let me give you an example.
Ah,
You know, people who are, if you are, we are pattern seeking. कहानियां
yeah,
बनाना तो हमारा, like, this is
yeah.
how we make sense of the world.
Yeah.
If there is, if we are in an ambiguous environment and we start detecting patterns that are not there, right? It is called conspiracy theory. यार ये
Yes.
तो कुछ like we hardly saw anything, वो चार dots हैं उनको connect
Yeah, yeah,
करके
yeah,
हमने कुछ
yeah,
कहानी बना दी. On
yeah.
the other hand, if we don't see a pattern at all
Mm.
because we are so focused on narrow things, then we get caught in our own linear thinking. जो
Echo
कि
chamber. Yeah.
echo. So basically, we are either not detecting patterns or detecting patterns that are not there.
That doesn't exist. Yes.
दोनों के अंदर
Like,
ही but therefore truth seeking is a सूक्ष्म subtle process, not
yeah.
easy for folks.
मिल जाएगा ना.
It's a process, it's not an object,
Yes.
which is
जिन
our thing,
खोजा
Yes.
right?
जिन खोजा तिन पाया. ढूंढने निकलोगे तो
It's
मिल ही जाएगा.
the beautiful part about all the Eastern philosophy is that truth seeking is a process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's never a destination or an object ki ho gaya, I've grasped this object, ye ho gaya.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a recent book that we are reading, like Snake and the Rope, which is,
बिल्कुल ठीक.
yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Rajiv introduced me to that Jungian philosophy book on Hinduism, which is very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that actually is, the root of, seeking the truth. But now the question is that if our entire life, everything is geared towards seeking truth. But as we get educated, as we get more information and more, I would say, quote unquote knowledge. I'm putting it in quotes because, definition can vary. And yet we keep falling prey to more and more lies or misinformation or narratives. So what's your opinion on why does that happen? Because from any logical perspective, the more you are educated, the more you have knowledge, you should not be falling prey to these conspiracy theories and many other things, right? But we do.
तो इस पे मैं थोड़ा सीख रहा था, पढ़ रहा था, and I came across a person called John Vervaeke. He is a cognitive science professor at Toronto University of Toronto, and has a YouTube channel under his name. And he has a fantastic set of episodes, and particularly his view on knowledge is very interesting. And his criticism of why, what Rajiv, you're saying, we are falling prey to, we can be educated, PhDs, and yet be wrong about so many things that everybody else can see that they're clearly wrong about. And his view is very interesting. He says there are 4 levels of knowledge according to cognitive science and this cumulative understanding of how cognition works. First, he calls propositional knowledge, which is like, the sun rises in the east, right? Or Earth rotates around the sun. These are propositions that can be falsified, A, B, and this is. Second is procedural knowledge, like how do you ride a bike? How do you swim? Like वो knowledge जो सी है, it's not like किताबें जितनी मर्जी पढ़ लोगे. You have to get in the water and learn how to swim. So it's procedural knowledge. And the third he calls is perspectival knowledge. And that's interesting. That is saying, can I assume the perspective of you? And can you assume my perspective? आप मेरे नजर से देख सकते हैं कि नहीं देख सकते? Because we are all limited human beings. If you say, my perspective is this, और मैं समझ ही नहीं पा रहा आपका perspective. Like I cannot see what your perspective is. Then that's a perspectival way of knowing. And the fourth is participatory, like literally who you are as being. Like participatory knowledge, like participating. To be part of, to be in love with somebody, to be in relationship with somebody. That way of knowing is completely different than propositional, procedural, perspectival, because at that level, it becomes part of who you are and how you're binding with that knowledge, right?
Essentially, the difference between knowledge and wisdom. So wisdom is when you have experienced.
So this is interesting. He basically says The reason why we culturally are in trouble, especially in the West, is because 90% of what people argue on is propositional knowledge at the high level, right? And we take that propositional knowledge to be the only legitimate form of knowledge, right? But when you start getting to perspectival knowledge, etc., and then he makes a very interesting point about wisdom, which you are making, Rajiv, which is intelligence is not the same as reasoning, right? Intelligence is general problem solving. Rationality के अंदर is course correction. Reasoning, logic is not rationality. Reasoning includes course correction, error correction. If your view of reasoning is not to include course correction, error correction, then basically you are just being rationalistic or logical without understanding the course correction mechanism. So Greeks का idea जो था rationality का, that was very different than modern idea. Modern idea is कि मेरा theorem है, किताब पढ़ ली है, ये A से लेकर B तक मैं deduct कर सकता हूँ, और ये मेरी hypothesis है, और ये मेरे propositions हैं, axioms हैं, रट लो, और A से B तक आपका आ जाएगा answer. Whereas Socrates and others basically were very clear कि no, you will go wrong with that, because there's error correction, and if you don't have mechanisms in your own rationality, error correcting, then you're lying. You're lying to yourself, and you're going to go wrong. And wisdom is to tell the difference. Wisdom is to be able to step out and say कि यहाँ पे error correction की जरूरत है.
Rajiv and Anurag, you've got a very interesting point here about education versus knowledge versus wisdom. And this reminds me of a movie, Sangharsh, if you've seen that movie, Pretty Zinta, Akshay Kumar, where she tells कि बस काले अक्षर घोटने से कोई विद्वान नहीं बन जाता. Which was a very powerful line. And the other day only, I was reading one article. It's about a couple who are doctors, and they did not have an offspring. They so badly wanted a child that they were sacrificing human life. And these things still happen. Again, these people are practitioners, like they're doctors, not PhD doctors, like doctors. Here, like, kiska pagal bana rahe ho? You want a life, and for that, you can sacrifice a life.
That exactly, you see, that's exactly the disconnect between, the knowledge, the wisdom, the narrative, or the truth seeking. So, one thing does not lead to the other. And now the question becomes that, okay, how do we train ourselves? How do we train our brains or minds or ourselves for this course correction? Where do we say, hey, enough of BS, and let's get to the brass tacks.
So true. It's a tough. Now they say that culturally, the three things that critical thinking, everybody understands the power of it. In fact, the whole scientific method is based on thinking. But then there is this idea of open-mindedness, critical thinking, but you have a conclusion, but you're always in doubt of the conclusion. That is actually the true scientific method. Versus the common view of scientific method is कि हमने prove कर दिया, वो खत्म, it's settled. That is wrong. That is actually not the scientific method at all. The Karl Popper, who was a philosopher of science, and he's the foundation of scientific method, he basically said it is conjecture, like आपने कुछ तुक्का मारा, literally की hypothesis बनाई, and then you observe, measurement करो, prediction करो, and then you have error correction. अगर आपका experiment के अंदर error correction नहीं है step, तो observe करके project करते रहो जो मर्जी है. That's not science, right? And no such thing as settled science, because all you have is the best available explanation.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Right? And what happened, my favorite quotation on that is, you ask people who are very strongly opinionated, is this your opinion? Do you have an opinion, or does the opinion have you?
Yes, exactly.
कि आप opinion के पकड़ के अंदर हैं, कि
Yes.
ये आपकी तो if you are so committed to an opinion,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
of course there's no error correction possible.
Yeah, I always say that, one should always have very strongly held opinion, no, loosely held strong opinions. So if a new fact comes along, then you should be ready to change your opinion. And, because we grow, I remember that when we were growing up, we used to, have very strong opinion of many things. And over the years, now we say, no, that was not true. Or
Yeah.
maybe we saw something different. And now we, have formed another opinion. Although we still very strongly
Yeah,
opinionated, but
yeah,
if a new fact comes along, then yes, we should be ready to change that
yeah.
opinion. But the problem is that we, like you said, that we get so much held by the opinions because they define us,
Mm.
and
Right.
letting go becomes very, very difficult, especially as you start aging more and more, because you become hardened in your opinions, your thoughts, your this
अक्कड़
thing.
बुद्धि कहते हैं हम उसे.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
true, so true. The thing is, at one level, it is known that because we have, there is such a thing called a very important, what we are doing, dialogue, where in a dialogue, you come out with conclusions that independently, individually, you would not be able to come to. Just because
Mm.
give and take happens, you have a certain way of presenting an idea that I understand something and I say, अच्छा, इसने ये कहा, अब कुछ समझ में आया. So this is a very important part of knowledge seeking is to, knowledge is not only in the head. In fact, knowledge is sharpened and created through interactions among people. But there's a method to that जिसे कहते हैं ना ज्ञानी को बोलते हैं कि भाई ध्यान कैसे यू हाउ डू यू हैव अ डिस्कोर्स इन विच यू
Yeah,
आर एक्चुअली listening and making progress and something new emerges rather than two people arguing with no progress, right? So that is part of life. If you're coming in with the idea that I'm gonna quote unquote win,
yeah,
then there is no progress of knowledge. All you're doing is coming with preconceived ideas, and it's a winning game, not a knowledge.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Do you want to have a discussion versus an argument?
हाँ
Yeah,
हाँ
yeah,
बिल्कुल ठीक.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
that's true.
now, see, now here's the thing, right? Now we both are in high tech, we've been like in AI and all that. One of the things that people ask me often, and which I respond in a certain way, but as AI is coming along, which is literally in our own image, you know, n- won't this problem be like multiplied x times with when we have all this, like you said that earlier, there's a shell, but the shell lies so conveniently, or like I would say, what's the right word, accurately, and essentially it's as close to the truth as possible.
So
So
it's an
what would
interesting
happen to us?
question. बिल्कुल
What would
ठीक,
happen?
because AI is an interesting. First of all, there's a dark side to it, and there's a hope for it. First of all,
Mm,
as of today, AI is a tool, not an agent.
mm,
Big difference, right? Agent, they can do something, they can do my bidding over time.
mm,
It will become an agent. There's no
yeah.
doubt about that. But currently, these are tools, and we are trying to see how far they can become agents for us, right? And
Mm,
agency is something which is a very powerful idea because we are agents. We have
mm,
free will and we have agency. The challenge with AI today, I think, is that all even the state of the art AI today, the best of the best LLMs and best, they're basically only regurgitating what was created by humans over the
yes.
thousands of years.
Yes.
So LLM models do not have access to, as I said, propositional knowledge, जैसे हम बता रहे थे. Like if you go
Mm,
back to the 4P framework, उनकी propositional knowledge है कि हमने ये किताब पढ़ी, उसमें से ये pattern निकाला और ये summarize कर दिया. Fair
mm,
enough, fair enough. But that's propositional knowledge. But वो किताब अगर नहीं थी तो they
yeah.
don't have access to any reality outside of that.
Mm,
Increasingly, we are getting computer vision and we are getting multiple modalities where we might have direct senses, sensory information, especially vision, right, and audio.
Mm.
But even there, how we are processing it and how, like, what kind of trustworthy conclusions come out is not clear. And very soon, we will reach the limit of what we can extract from LLM patterns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
basically, halaki, it's going to be a very powerful tool and it will surprise us and shock us. But let's not forget, it is basically built upon the human knowledge of thousands of years as reflected in language.
Yes.
If you just hold that thought as reflected in language, language is a very, very small part of our knowledge, wisdom, communication. As this, it is said 90% of communication among humans happened outside of verbal
Yes.
knowledge.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
so these are extremely people who try to. I have zero patience for people who say, "Oh, this will become AGI, universal God, universal intelligence,
I
and
know.
it will become." No, it will not. Right?
No, it will
Today,
not. Yes.
even a
Yeah.
4-year child, a 3-year old child can do things better than this because
Yeah.
of the, as we were talking about, they are in grip of reality. A
Yeah.
child can go look at the worldview and figure out how to make sense of that reality, as we were saying, the right hemisphere perspective.
Mm.
Machines can't at the moment. I'm not saying कभी हो ही नहीं सकता. All I'm
Yeah.
saying is आजकल जो hype है वो इतनी ज़्यादा है
Yes.
कि हमने सब कुछ कर लिया है. It is not true at all, but it is a significant new step change versus previous generation. Before we
Correct.
were doing A plus B, like 2 plus 2 equals 4. That was the
Ah,
computational foundation of everything until now. Now we can say A alongside B might predict C.
yes.
So now we are getting into the guessing game, prediction game, which is
Yeah.
what AI is, right?
Yeah. I think the main thing is that as whether it's artificial intelligence or we ourselves, as we start creating our own narratives, we start forming these strong opinions, we start creating this shell for ourselves where we feel comfortable, and now suddenly that gets challenged. How do we break out of it? Now, like we talk about the self-realization, self-actualization, and how do we course correct ourselves to break out of the lie that we are living, which is not good for us. There's some lies that
Yeah.
obviously you pump up your ego, those are subtle things that you tell yourself for survival sake or for happiness sake or things that are good for you. You're not hurting anybody, but you are doing something for yourself. I think that would be a challenge that we will have to live with and keep unfolding.
You see, historically, the positive is the following. We have always been tool makers. Humans have always created tools, from controlling fire to social media to internet to, and initially we make the tools and then the tools shape us. And that's the history of humans and tools. And we are experiencing it in the current generation where we created social media tools and now the tools are shaping us.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting insight. Humans have always been able to evolve from the way the tools shape us to get to the next level. Now, there's a dark side. You can say, this could all kill us and we could all blow ourselves up. But we had the ability to blow ourselves up for thousands of years, and we didn't. And we have always had some few people who've been able to say, oh, we created this tool and we use the tool. Now the tool is hurting us. Now the tool is shaping us. I need to now step out and go to the next level of controlling the tool again. And I think
Mm.
that cycle of tool creation and tool changing us is continuing
Yeah.
to go. And what's going to happen with AI is that this is a new capability, and we are scared of it because we don't know how this will shape us.
Yeah.
And
It's like we had to
initially, yeah,
finish your thought.
initially it'll scare us, and as all technologies do. And this time, because it is now mimicking certain things that we thought was exclusively human, we will give it a lot more credence. But we will discover, I think, that humans are a lot more complex psychologically, socially, intellectually than LLMs or any of the
Yeah,
current technologies on the horizon. And then hopefully we'll come back and say, okay, this is how we go above the tool.
exactly. Yeah, I was why I interjected was that it reminded me like we had to detonate the atom bomb before we could figure out the nuclear energy. So, taming of the tool versus the correct use of the tool. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting how these narratives, the lies, the truth seeking, everything starts you know shaping the society.
Right. Uh, Anurag, before we move on to the closing section, I have some lightning speed questions and some rapid fire. So you have to answer in a blink, like very fast, like lightning speed. Okay.
Yeah.
Big or small lie?
Big lies.
Okay. Lies of omission or fabrication?
Fabrication.
Truth or self-preservation?
Truth. Painfully.
Oh, it is painful, but yes. Okay, these are some rapid fire. What was the first lie you remember telling? Both of you.
Oh, that's a long list. Long list.
First one,
Yeah.
first one.
Mostly exaggerating about the stories I was telling. Like
Acha.
so every story I told was usually 2 to 3 times bigger than the reality I had experienced for the story.
Yeah.
कोई असलियत वाक्य जो हो उसको चिकना चुपड़ा तड़का लगा के बड़ा बना के कहानी बनाना, ये मेरी खासियत है.
हमारा बिगेस्ट लाया था, क्लास में सब फेल हुए सब्जेक्ट में. भले ही वो टॉपर मेरे घर में हो, क्लास में सब फेल हुए सब्जेक्ट में. Okay. Do you lie to protect yourself or someone else?
Both.
Okay. One, you have to pick one.
Oh, someone else.
Someone else. Okay. When did you realize lying could be a powerful tool?
I don't
Election
know.
year
I ever
won't
realized.
count. Election year won't count. Anything apart from that.
From the very beginning, as a child, you learn that you can get the extra cookie if you said मैंने खाया नहीं है अभी मीठा.
I know.
हाँ जी, हमारी.
दूसरा
Yes.
रसगुल्ला मैंने अभी लिया नहीं है,
Exactly.
पहला रसगुल्ला ही.
And
मेरे को तो पता ही नहीं था. ये भी है.
so Anurag, have you ever lied to create a version of yourself you thought would be better?
Yes.
We are Punjabis, so
Yes, I was gonna say, ये तो like पैदाइशी चीज है. हर पंजाबी को सिखाया जाता है कि you are
Yeah.
God's gift to mankind. तुझे
Yes.
right? So, my friend who is also Punjabi tells कि like Punjabi children are born laughing. उनको कोई दर्द ही नहीं होता है. Like, so these kind
They're
of
not
lies
born
are
crying.
cultural lies for us to make do with what we experienced. You bring up something interesting as a transition. पंजाबियत की बात ये है. Punjabi as a culture, even pre-partition Punjab, was at the crossroads of invaders from the West, like Central Asia and India at that time, Hindustan. So invariably, Punjab was the place where all armies came in, entering India, and all armies left, leaving India. So it was really a place which was not easy to live in.
नहीं,
Right?
सबको
Easy
बिठा
to
के
live
खाना
in.
ही खिलाया होगा. रुको. खाना
So,
खिला रहे हैं.
this was, I think, a cultural
Storytelling.
phenomena of saying कि, we are stronger, bigger, and then what is feasible. The reality was
Yes.
very harsh.
That was survival game.
Survival game, exactly.
Thank you so much, Anurag, for coming on our show. I know you're a huge fanboy of Amrita Preetham. Couplets of Amrita Preetham for our listeners, please.
Thank you so
And
much.
something that you have translated because I think, yeah.
Yes. First of all, Rajiv, I need to give credit for, because when he was in Punjab, he introduced me to Amrita Preetham's work by gifting me a book of hers very early when in our youth when we were in college. And since that time, I had the opportunity to learn Punjabi a little bit formally and so forth. So I want to acknowledge that. And here is you can go to the blog I have called Kissing Fire. And this is a poem where I have translated 50 plus poems. And I've also recited them in my voice and recorded them. This is called Ik Tota Tupda. ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਵੇਲਾ ਯਾਦ ਹੈ ਜਦ ਇੱਕ ਟੋਟਾ ਧੁੱਪ ਦਾ ਸੂਰਜ ਦੀ ਉਂਗਲ ਪਕੜ ਕੇ ਹਨੇਰੇ ਦਾ ਮੇਲਾ ਵੇਖਦਾ ਭੀੜਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗਵਾਚਿਆ। ਸੋਚਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਸਹਿਮ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਸੂੰਹ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਸਾਖ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਜੋ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰ ਇਸ ਗਵਾਚੇ ਬਾਲ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੱਥ ਮੇਰਾ ਫੜ ਲਿਆ। ਤੂੰ ਕਿਤੇ ਲੱਭਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਹੱਥ ਨੂੰ ਛੂੰਹਦਾ ਪਿਆ ਨਿੱਕਾ ਤੇ ਤੱਤਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਹ। ਨਾ ਹੱਥ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪਰਚਦਾ, ਨਾ ਹੱਥ ਦਾ ਖਾਂਦਾ ਵਸਾ। ਹਨੇਰਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਮੁੱਕਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਮੇਲੇ ਦੇ ਰੌਲੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਆਲਮ ਚੁੱਪਦਾ, ਤੇ ਯਾਦ ਤੇਰੀ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਜਿਉਂ ਇੱਕ ਟੋਟਾ ਧੁੱਪ ਦਾ। एक टुकड़ा धूप का। मुझे वो वक्त याद है जब एक टुकड़ा धूप का सूरज की उंगली पकड़ के अंधेरे का मेला देखता, भीड़ों में हुआ गुमशुदा। सोचती हूं कि सहम का और एकांत का भी साथ होता है। मैं जो इसकी कुछ नहीं पर इस गुमशुदा बच्चे ने ये हाथ मेरा पकड़ लिया। तू कहीं मिलता नहीं, लेकिन हाथ को छूती एक गर्म और नन्ही सांस। ना मेरे हाथ से संभलती, ना कुछ हाथ से खाती। अंधेरा कहीं ढलता नहीं, मेले के शोर में भी है एक आलम चुप का, और याद तेरी इस तरह जैसे एक टुकड़ा धूप का।
That was very profound, Anurag. You'll translate it in English as well, right?
Last one is in English. A patch of sunshine. I remember the time when a patch of light holding the finger of sun in the festival of dark got separated in a scrum. I wonder if solitude and fear are kith and kin. The lost child has held my hand, though I'm a stranger to him. You are nowhere to be found. I feel a hot breath on my hand. Not easy to comfort, not easy to understand. The dark looms forever, but in the din of crowd, there is a silence divine, and your memory comes like a patch of sunshine.
Fantastic.
That is very
One of
profound,
the
Anurag.
best. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. Do visit our website, thelielama.com, THELIELLAMA.com. Leave us a comment. Let us know that if you would like to come on our show. Keep listening. Over to you, Rajiv.
Yeah, thank you. It was wonderful discussion, Anurag. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Gunjan and Rajiv. I enjoyed it.